So the summit of the three heads of state of the Alliance of Sahel State has commenced on the 23rd of December. And this was a highly anticipated meeting. There's some good news that came out of this meeting, some very strategic decision that was made from this Alliance of Sahel State. We will go over all of that, the speeches of the heads of state. We will go through all of this. So let's begin. This was a 2-day summit from the 22nd to the 23rd of December. The first day, the 22nd, we saw the arrival of General of the Army Abdurrahman Chiani to Bamako. And of course, there were many people freaking out. Where is Captain Ibrahim Traore? And President Traore of Burkina Faso, Captain Traore, arrived on the 23rd of December. And if you remember last year, General, it was the same thing. Captain Traore arrived the first day of the summit, and General Assimi Goita arrived the second day of the summit. And I think this is intentional and deliberate. And you saw that last year, the last summit, General Assimi Goita took the presidency of the Confederation of Sahel States. And this year, Captain Traore, which arrived the following day, or the last day of the summit, took the presidency of the Alliance of Sahel States. So you see the strategic thinking of these leaders. And during the summit, we saw the inauguration of the Development and Financial Bank of the Confederation of Sahel States. We also saw the inauguration of the AES television. They've created a joint television station, and there's talk about creating, an online presence and also a radio station, which I think is based in Ouagadougou. Yeah, the day before the summit, we saw the official launch of the unified forces, the command force, special force of the Alliance of Sahel States by General Assimi Goita. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's start off with the inauguration of the strategic institution, the Financial and Development Bank, which is said to be close to $1 billion, $900 million fund. Ladies and gentlemen, many of us were looking for a launch of a currency, but the launch of a currency is not feasible at this moment. The strategic infrastructures are not yet in place. Also, to launch a currency, you want to have a trust in your currency. You want your currency, when it goes on the international market, it is not weak and it cannot be easily undermined. Meaning, even in your local economy, you want the even down to the marketplace, down to the market, the street, people have confidence in this currency, and we haven't seen that haven't been built yet. Even though there's great enthusiasm, there's great demand for it, we haven't got there because you want the institution and the resources to back that currency, and you don't want that currency to be easily undermined. For example, what happened with Guinea Conakry with Sekou Touré, where the French basically printed um, counterfeit currency to undermine the Guinean franc. So you don't want that to happen. Also, you want to I think we're in a different age now, even though many of these countries were underdeveloped in sense of financial infrastructure. Everything is controlled through France and so forth. You want to replace those things like something as simple as money transfer. How can you move money to people, whether it's low in the local economy, in the international economy? You don't want these apps and so forth that are controlled by Western or French institution to be able to infiltrate your financial system. So you want to create a good financial structure for that a currency to be launched. And I think we're well on the way for that. I think the AES is keeping a lot of things strategic. They're keeping a lot of things to themselves. We have to build that infrastructure before it comes out. So with the financial and development bank, of course, you're going to see a lot of projects being launched. We talk about that more with the presidency of Captain Ibrahim Traore. You see a lot of project be funded, whether it's within a certain state of the Alliance of Sahel state or joint project. You see a lot of that. I think that is um, made to fund projects, the development of project that will grow the economy. And I just spoke about the currency a little bit, just a small note. When you launch a currency, a way it can be undermined is that you import so much and export so little. So you want to build an industry, at least an industry where you can actually uh, reduce your import so you can strengthen your currency. You don't want to launch a currency and 99% of the things you use in your country is imported. You want to bring your imports down so your currency will be strengthened and strong on the international market. It won't be devalued as it launched. So just on that. And you see the launch of the television of the AES, you will see a lot more shows and so forth, analyze, to communicate to their population. I think French and Western media is very dominant in the world, of course, but in Africa, there's no alternative to these media organization and media sources. So you see a lot more communication directed at the population. So that is that, and the radio station have been launched in Burkina Faso as well, and also the unified force. At the earlier this year, it is said that the unified force, was about 5,000 troops, and they've carried out operation, of course. But we see the official launch of the unified force in Bamako, Mali, and I tell you, these guys are not here to joke. You can see this is very serious. The unified force actually possesses their own airplane, own drones, and you see they acquired modern fighter jets. And I know for sure that the AES have even more modern fighter jets that they haven't shown to the world, of course. But you saw with the violation of the AES airspace by the Nigerian C-130 and how it was caught and grounded the the Burkina Authority. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a joke. And all this is building, and I think they mentioned that even last year, they mentioned that the end goal is a federation. So they've been in a confederation. I think maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe in the next 3 years, they probably move to a federation. So now we are into the second day of the summit. Well, everything was launched in the second day, but we're in the gathering of the heads of state, and I think this is where a lot of people started paying attention, where you realize that what is going on in West Africa, and I've said it, West Africa is probably the second richest region in the world, the first being Central Africa. And West Africa is so rich culturally, so diverse, but the natural resources, the population is huge. The population of West Africa is more than North America. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably the same as North and South America. Nigeria has what, almost 260 million people. Some say it's 300. West Africa is probably over 400 million people, close to 500 million people. So, and the resources are immense. Mali has gold, gas, oil, so much unexploited resources. Burkina Faso, discovery of new resources. Niger, uranium, gold, gas, oil, everything you can think of. Not to mention Nigeria have many resources, gas, oil, gold, lithium, you name it. Guinea Conakry, bauxite, Ghana, bauxite, gold. It's so much resources in West Africa. And this is where I want to get to the first speech of the summit. Captain Traore, he spoke and he was blunt, he was very straightforward, and you can see he's a very strategic thinker, his analysis. And he's first of all, he remind everybody about the Arab Spring, and he makes sure to mention that the Arab Spring was never a organic movement. It was basically manipulated by these same imperialist forces to cause division within that region, destabilization of the region, to continue to occupy that region. Of course, he didn't say all that, but that is essentially what it is. If you notice the so-called Arab Spring, where people were fighting for freedom, whatever, the thing that they say, you notice it only targeted regimes or government that the West wasn't keen on. For example, let's say North Africa, it was Libya. Muammar Gaddafi, who was basically a sovereignist. Let's put it mildly a sovereignist, and he wanted to, see a more sovereign Africa control over its resources, and also he tried to unite the Arab world earlier. That didn't work out. Why weren't there a uprising in Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. There was no uprising in Morocco because these regimes, such as United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and so these are monarchies. They're not democratic. There's no what you would call freedom, human rights that they even enjoyed in a country like Syria, where you have religious freedom and so forth. It is not as repressive as a country like Saudi Arabia. You didn't have anything like that. You only had it in government that the West, that was an impediment to the West in that world, in that region of the world. And it was also to divide the region too on religious sect and so forth, weaken the state to continue to have your presence in this region. Look at Syria. The head of Syria was a high ranking ISIS official, Al Qaeda official, and now he's the head of Syria and he's being welcomed in many capitals around the world. So you see, which will lead me to my next video, that the so called fight against terrorism is not what it seemed in my analysis, in my opinion. But he spoke about that and he said that kind of engineering is coming to West Africa, which is pinning people against people. Because right now West Africa is divided into two camps. Anti-imperialist people are looking for sovereignty. People are looking to develop. People are who are wanting to take their destiny in their own hands through freedom, benefit from their resources, development. But the other side is those who want to keep the region and the people and the resources in the hands of these colonial powers. I won't call them from former colonial powers anymore, because this is blatant colonization. And how can they do that? You see, these regimes are not, you won't in the so-called Arab Spring, they use regime change. But these regimes, like in Nigeria, in Tinubu, in Benin, in Cote d'Ivoire, they would rather save these regimes and at the same time causing division in these countries, causing, even supporting separatist movement, mercenaries, terrorism, which will cause a lot of, like the president said, a lot of bloodshed in this region. And that is what I think a lot of these countries with these regimes, for example, in Nigeria, Benin, you see one group is being pinned against another group to cause community violence. Many of it is shown as religious violence. For example, in Nigeria, they're saying Christians are being targeted, which is true, but at the same time, Muslims are being targeted by the same group. So it is not a religious thing. These bandits and these terrorists are not fighting for anything. What is the goal of Boko Haram? What are they doing? They're just targeting innocent people. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the president is talking about. And you can see another thing he spoke about is that At the same time, they're building this mountain, which is their military, and they're building infrastructure to resist this upcoming black winter, as he said, these heads of state, these elites in a lot of these countries are trying to chip away at these rocks that are being put up, or these mountains that are being put up, to prepare against this black winter that is coming. And he said this black winter will come to this country, and will Pan-Africanism be used, or will Burkina Faso and the AES use what they've built to protect these people? And I believe we see the answer for that, because a lot of these countries, a country like, I said this before, ladies and gentlemen, is either these puppet leaders, these pro-imperialist leaders, subjugate the people of West Africa, or the people take their destiny in their own hand. And these heads of state are also pushing this divide against communities, tribalism, and so forth, to cause chaos, so they can attain their position that they have been given by the AES. And I said that West Africa is divided into two regions, two blocks: pro-imperialist and anti-imperialist. On the anti-imperialists, of course, you have the three heads of state: Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and the government, of course, and the people. But also in these ECOWAS countries, you have the people that are on the side of the anti-imperialists, because they want their resources to benefit them. They don't want to be occupied by foreign military powers. But on the other side, the pro-imperialist countries, you have these elites, not just the president, these elites, these millionaires, the billionaires that are in partnership with these elites from imperialist countries. So yes, you can focus on Tinubu, but Tinubu doesn't work alone. Tinubu has his men in the military that are paid, that are benefiting. Tinubu has ministers. Tinubu have businessmen. Tinubu have politicians. Tinubu have religious leaders. That is who is against the people. So you have the people and the anti-imperialists in the camp of the anti-imperialists, and then you have the pro-imperialists with these presidents and oligarchies that are in the region, that want to keep the region subjugated and don't want development, prosperous nations, and so forth. So that is basically the essential speech, at least the first speech given by Captain Ibrahim Traore. He spoke about what is coming and what is being prepared for. Now let's get to Assimi Goita. And I think many people are focused on a Captain Ibrahim Traore speech, and I think Assimi Goita and General Chiani's speech are just as important as Captain Traore. So Assimi Goita spoke about what the AES have accomplished, mainly what has accomplished and so forth, and the structure that have been put in place. So he spoke about the unified force, he spoke about the investment and development bank, he spoke about the diplomatic headway that have been made, he spoke about development that have been made, and so forth. So in just 1 year, he remember 1 year, and he spoke about the security gains that have been made, and how the confederation have been able to reinvent itself every time the enemy or these terrorists and their backers reinvent themselves to destabilize them. So he spoke about that essentially, and he spoke about the foundation that have been put in to further the confederation and of the alliance. And then we move to General Chiani, and I think, I don't want to say one speech was better than everyone else, but I think General Chiani is always so strategic and precise in his speech, and profound. First of all, he spoke about the subjugation of Africa, not just in the past 60 years, or since this so-called independence, but he spoke about the centuries of humiliation. In China they talk about the century, 1 century of humiliation there, compared to what Africa has been going through since, let's say, let's give them since the 1600 or 1500 up until the 21st century that we're in. It is nothing, not to belittle the Chinese suffering that they went through, but look at what Africa has been going through. And then the General Chiani spoke about the rise of the revolution. He spoke about since independence and then this new wave of uh, quest for African independence, real independence. And then the general went on to say that every decision that will be made that affect the confederation, that is that benefits the confederation, will be made in Niamey, Ouagadougou, and Bamako. So what they're saying, they're asserting their sovereignty, that every decision that will be made will be sovereign and it will be the sole benefit of the people. So General Chiani mentioned the strategic position of the AES. Mali, General Assimi Goita mentioned the foundational vision, or the foundation roots or grounding of the AES, and Burkina Faso mentioned the future and the going forward of the AES. Basically, they all did, you would say. But General Chiani pinpoint what many Africans and many people in the world are thinking. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to prosper. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants to live in free without hostility and so forth. So, ladies and gentlemen, the presidents went back and they deliberated. They did the negotiation and they came back. There was a final communique, and yes, the communique, our press release was read. Many agreements were signed. Many strategic agreements were signed, and of course, the presidency is now was handed over to the president of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore. And again, Traore gave a glimpse of what to come. Remember, I said Traore was more futuristic, what to come. Of course, they mentioned that they will develop on what they've gained. You will see. Remember, they said they will launch a confederal parliament, a human rights court, and so forth, and development in the development sphere. They will launch a something like a railway and so forth. They will harmonize their customs and border, relax the border even more. President Traore basically said it. They will withdraw from all useless organizations. So wink wink, African Union, your time is coming to an end. ECOWAS is basically finished. African Union, it's time to get that punch. So that's the summary. That's my summary and analysis of the AES summit of 2025. This was such a strategic shift in Africa and in West Africa that I think, many people were expecting something big or something, you know, maybe like the announcing of a currency or something. But this was such a strategic summit that I think many people have overlooked what really happened. I think this was such a bad year for ECOWAS and the puppets in ECOWAS, like Nigeria, which I'll do another video about the strike in Nigeria, what happened. But this was such a strategic loss. Remember, Mali was supposed to fall within a few weeks. Al Qaeda was supposed to be in Bamako. You remember that? All that propaganda, that destabilization attempt was for this summit not to happen. They did everything. They blockaded Mali. Oil, oil and fuel was not getting to Mali, to a lot of these country terrorists. They mobilized all these mercenary groups, the terrorist group, to attack, to burn oil tankers, to burn fuel, So the population which will rebel. And then to go back to Captain Traore's speak, he said, let's remain calm. He is basically preparing the population for what is coming. He said, let's remain calm. Everything might not happen the way you want. We might not do the things you want right away, but let's remain calm. Everything will happen in time. This is what I tell you. The franc CFA, the currency wasn't launched this year, but I think the CA franc, the CFA is done. It's done. It is done. Already in Senegal, they are speaking about it. It's done. Uh, and I think, Captain Traore said the AES will expand too. Another key moment that the president said that the AES will expand. And I think that is very key. That is very key. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this video.